I have always been the kind of sister who would move mountains for family. When my little sister Rachel got engaged to Jake, I secretly bought the most beautiful venue in town 2 years prior as an investment. Willowbrook Estate became my hidden gift to her perfect day. I quietly arranged favorable rental rates and slipped $15,000 into their honeymoon fund over months. Little did I know the venue I secretly owned would become the stage for the most shocking family drama of my life. Before I dive into this story, I would love to know where you are watching from. Hit that like button if you are ready for a tale of family betrayal and sweet justice. And do not forget to subscribe, because trust me, you will not want to miss what happens next when a sister's love meets a mother's cruelty. Growing up as the oldest daughter in our family meant carrying expectations that felt heavier than the Rocky Mountains. I am Naomi, 28 years old, and I have spent most of my adult life building a successful real estate investment business, while my sister Rachel, 4 years younger, floated through design school with the grace of someone who never worried about paying bills. Our mother Linda, a high school teacher with strong opinions about everything, had always made her preferences crystal clear. Rachel was the artistic one, the beauty, the daughter she could parade around teacher conferences and family gatherings. I was the responsible one, the practical daughter who handled adult situations, while Rachel got to remain forever young in everyone's eyes. Dad Robert worked as an engineer and generally stayed quiet during family discussions, preferring his newspaper to navigating the emotional waters that Mom created. When he did speak up, it was usually to support whatever Linda had already decided. When Rachel announced her engagement to Jake, a nice enough guy who worked in marketing, I immediately volunteered to help with wedding planning. Not as a paid coordinator, mind you, but as a loving sister who wanted everything perfect. I spent countless weekends meeting with vendors, negotiating prices with caterers, and researching photographers who could capture Rachel's vision. The venue selection process was where my secret plan began. I had purchased Willowbrook Estate 2 years earlier during a foreclosure auction. The property needed work, but I saw its potential as both an investment and perhaps someday a location for family celebrations. I hired contractors to restore the gardens, update the lighting, and transform it into the kind of place that would make any bride feel like royalty. When Rachel mentioned struggling to find an affordable venue that matched her Pinterest dreams, I casually suggested she look at Willowbrook Estate. I arranged for the property manager who worked for me to offer our family an incredibly generous rental rate. To Rachel and our parents, it appeared that luck had simply smiled upon them. Each month, I quietly transferred money into their honeymoon fund, $500 here, $1,000 there, until I had contributed $15,000 toward their dream trip to Europe. I created anonymous transfers that appeared to come from various family members and friends, making it seem like their community was supporting their journey together. The first sign that something was wrong came during the wedding dress shopping expedition. Linda announced that she and Rachel would be spending the day trying on dresses and looking at accessories. When I asked about the time and location, Linda gave me a look that could freeze summer rain. "Oh, honey, I think Rachel needs someone on one time with her mother for this," Linda said, adjusting her purse strap with deliberate precision. "You understand, right? Sometimes a bride needs space to bond with her mom without any outside pressure." Outside pressure. That was what I had become in the equation of my sister's wedding planning, despite being the invisible force making everything possible behind the scenes. The bridal shower presented another slap of reality. I organized the entire event, from booking the restaurant to coordinating with relatives across 3 states to ensure everyone could attend. I spent weeks creating personalized decorations and assembling gift bags for each guest. But when Linda stood up to give her speech that afternoon, she thanked Rachel's friends and Jake's sisters for putting together such a beautiful celebration. Thanks to Rachel's wonderful taste, We even found the most incredible venue. Linda announced to the gathered women, raising her mimosa in toast. My daughter has such sophisticated style that she managed to find this amazing place that all the other brides in town are jealous they cannot book. I sat there with my own mimosa, growing warm in my hands, watching my mother credit Rachel for finding the venue. I owned the venue. I had personally renovated the venue I was providing at practically no cost to ensure my sister could have her dream wedding. As the shower continued, the comments kept coming. Linda made subtle suggestions about my appearance, my clothes, my lifestyle choices. Maybe I should consider a different hairstyle for the wedding. Perhaps I could dress more like Rachel, who always looked so put together. She hoped I would not do anything to overshadow the bride on her special day. Dad Robert sat in his recliner later that evening, reading the sports section while I helped Mom clean up after the shower. When I mentioned feeling hurt by some of the comments, he looked up briefly and said, "Your mother is just excited about Rachel's wedding. You know how she gets when she is planning something big." That was the moment I realized I was completely alone in recognizing how wrong this situation had become. 3 weeks before the wedding, the criticism escalated to levels that left me questioning my own perception of reality. Linda insisted I accompany Rachel to her final dress fitting, but once we arrived at the bridal boutique, her real agenda became clear. "Now, Naomi, I want to discuss your dress for the wedding," Linda said, settling into one of the plush chairs, while Rachel disappeared into the fitting room. "I think it would be best if you chose something in more muted tones. You know colors that will not compete with Rachel in the photographs." I stared at her reflection in the mirror, processing this request. Muted tones. Well, yes, perhaps a nice beige or soft gray. Something that will complement the wedding party without drawing attention away from where it should be focused. She smiled at me in a way that might have looked motherly to an outside observer but felt like a knife between my ribs. When Rachel emerged in her stunning white gown, she looked like something from a fairy tale. The dress hugged her figure perfectly, and the beadwork caught the boutique lighting like captured starlight. She was genuinely beautiful, and I felt my heart swell with pride for my little sister. "Gorgeous," I said sincerely. "You look absolutely gorgeous, Rachel." Linda immediately jumped into the conversation. "Do not you think the photos will be so much better if we keep the color palette coordinated? I was just telling Naomi that she should probably skip the professional makeup too. Her natural look would be more appropriate for her age." My age. I was 28 years old, not 58. But according to Linda, I was already past the point where professional makeup would be worth the investment for family wedding photos. Rachel glanced at me in the mirror, and for just a moment I thought she might say something in my defense. Instead, she turned to examine the dress hem and said, "Mom, do you think we should take in the waist a little more?" The conversation moved forward as if my feelings were not even worth acknowledging. 2 nights later, our family gathered for dinner at the house where I had grown up. Linda had prepared Rachel's favorite meal and invited Jake to join us for what she called a wedding celebration dinner. The dining room table was set with the good china that only came out for special occasions. As we ate, Linda launched into a detailed recounting of all the wedding arrangements, giving credit to Rachel for every successful element. The flowers were Rachel's choice. The menu was Rachel's refined taste. The music selection showed Rachel's sophisticated ear for what would make guests happy. And of course, my talented daughter Rachel found this amazing venue that everyone is talking about. Linda continued beaming at Rachel like she had just won a Nobel Prize. I do not know how she managed to secure Willowbrook Estate, but somehow she worked her magic, and now we get to have the wedding of the century. I set down my fork carefully. Actually, I helped quite a bit with the venue selection. Linda's smile faltered for just a second before returning full force. Well, of course you helped, dear. But Rachel did all the real work of researching and visiting locations. You know how much effort goes into finding the perfect place. I reached for my purse and pulled out my phone, scrolling through my bank account until I found the honeymoon fund transfer history. I also wanted to mention that I have been contributing to Rachel and Jake's honeymoon fund, $15,000 over the past several months. I turned my phone screen toward the table, showing the electronic receipts for every transfer I had made. Jake's eyes widened as he looked at the amounts. Naomi, we had no idea. This is incredibly generous. Linda waved her hand dismissively. Money is not everything. Rachel has put in all the emotional labor of planning this wedding. She has spent countless hours making sure every detail is perfect. Anyone can write a check, but it takes real dedication to create the kind of beautiful celebration Rachel is giving us. Rachel looked down at her plate and said nothing. The following week brought an incident that should have been my final warning about what was coming. I received a phone call from Marcus, the photographer Rachel had hired for the wedding. We had spoken several times during the planning process, and he was calling to confirm some last-minute details about the timeline. "Hey, Naomi, I wanted to run something by you because it seemed kind of unusual," Marcus said. "Your mom called me yesterday with some specific requests about the photo coverage." My stomach immediately tensed. "What kind of requests?" "She asked me to take minimal photos of you during the ceremony and reception. She said the family wants to focus the photography on the more photogenic family members and that I should prioritize shots of Rachel, your parents, and Jake's family." The words hit me like a physical blow. She said photogenic family members. Yeah, and she mentioned that Rachel's day should be about highlighting her beauty and not getting distracted by other people in the background. I have to tell you, in 15 years of wedding photography, I have never had a mother of the bride ask me to specifically exclude one of her own daughters from the photo coverage. I thanked Marcus for telling me and hung up the phone, then immediately called Linda. "What did you think you were doing calling our photographer?" I asked without any small talk. "I was ensuring that Rachel's wedding photos turn out beautifully," Linda replied calmly. The photographer needed guidance about how to capture the most important moments of the day. By asking him to avoid taking pictures of me? "Naomi, this is Rachel's day. She should be the center of attention, not competing for space in her own wedding album with people who might overshadow her natural beauty. People who might overshadow her, meaning me, her own daughter." The seating arrangement betrayal came just 5 days before the wedding. I discovered my name on a handwritten chart Linda had been working on, placed at a table in the very back of the reception hall with distant relatives I had not spoken to in years. Jake's unemployed cousin, who had met Rachel exactly twice, was seated at the head table with the immediate family. When I asked Linda about this decision, she explained that they needed to put the most photogenic people at the head table for the professional photos. The back table would be fine for me because I had always been practical and understanding about these kinds of decisions. "You do not mind, do you, honey?" Linda asked sweetly. "Rachel thought you would prefer to sit somewhere quieter where you could relax and not worry about being in all the pictures." Rachel had agreed to this arrangement. My own sister thought I belonged hidden away from the celebration, tucked safely out of view, where my presence would not diminish her perfect day. 2 days before the wedding, I accompanied Linda and Rachel to Willowbrook Estate for a final walkthrough with the vendors. As we moved through the beautifully restored rooms and gardens that I had spent months bringing back to life, Linda gushed about every detail to anyone who would listen. "Rachel has such sophisticated taste," she told the florist. "She found this incredible venue that perfectly matches her vision." "My daughter knew exactly what she wanted," she informed the caterer. "She has an eye for elegance that you just cannot teach." I stood there, listening to my mother credit Rachel for choosing and finding the venue that I owned, that I had renovated, that I was providing at a fraction of its actual cost. The irony was so sharp it felt like swallowing broken glass. But I said nothing. I smiled and nodded, and let Linda continue building the narrative where Rachel was the brilliant mastermind behind every beautiful element of her upcoming wedding. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. The phone call came at 7:30 in the morning, 2 hours after I had finished my coffee and started reviewing contracts for a new property acquisition. Linda's voice was bright and cheerful, as if she was calling to discuss weekend brunch plans, instead of delivering news that would shatter what remained of our family relationship. "Good morning, honey. I hope I am not calling too early, but I wanted to catch you before you started your day." "What can I do for you, Mom?" "Well, I have been thinking about tomorrow, and I believe it would be best for everyone if you do not attend Rachel's wedding." The words hung in the air between us like a challenge, waiting to be accepted or refused. I set down my pen and leaned back in my office chair, processing what I had just heard. "I am sorry, could you repeat that? Do not even think about showing up to the wedding." Linda continued, her voice taking on the sharp edge I had learned to recognize as her final word tone. "You will ruin the photos. Rachel deserves better in her background." Better in her background. As if I was a piece of furniture that might clash with the decor rather than the sister who had made this entire celebration possible. "Mom, I am Rachel's sister. This is my family. And as your family, we are asking you to do what is best for Rachel's special day. Jake's relatives are going to be there, and Rachel's college friends, and we want them to see our family looking our absolute best. You understand what I am saying? Do not you?" I understood perfectly. She was saying that my presence would embarrass them in front of people whose opinions they valued more than my feelings. "Have you discussed this with Rachel?" Rachel agrees completely. She said she would feel so much more relaxed, knowing that the photos will turn out perfectly without any distractions. "We thought maybe you could develop a sudden illness, something that would excuse your absence without creating any drama." I closed my eyes and felt something fundamental shift inside my chest. The sister who had spent months arranging every detail of this wedding, who had contributed $15,000 to their honeymoon, who owned the very venue they had been bragging about, was being asked to fake an illness to avoid ruining their perfect day. "Of course, Mom," I said, keeping my voice steady and calm. "I understand completely." "Oh, I knew you would be reasonable about this. Rachel will be so relieved. She was worried you might make a scene or insist on being included when we all know it would be better this way." "You are absolutely right. I would not want to ruin anything for Rachel." "Exactly. I am so glad we can count on you to put family first." This is what love looks like, Naomi making sacrifices for the people who matter most. After Linda hung up, I sat in my office for exactly 3 minutes, staring at the framed photo on my desk of Rachel and me from last Christmas. Then I opened my laptop and logged into the bank account that held their honeymoon fund. The transfer took less than 30 seconds. $15,000 moved from their honeymoon account back to my personal savings, leaving their vacation fund depleted by exactly the amount I had contributed over the past several months. I took a screenshot of the transaction confirmation and opened our family group text thread, which included Linda, Robert, Rachel, and Jake. I attached the screenshot and typed a simple message reclaiming my investment. Then I set my phone aside and returned to work. The phone started ringing within 2 minutes. "What do you mean, your investment?" Linda's voice was no longer cheerful. That was family money that everyone contributed to help Rachel and Jake start their marriage. "Check the bank records, Mom. Every deposit can be traced back to my account. Every single transfer came from my personal savings." "You cannot do this the day before the wedding." "I am just following your advice about not ruining things. Since my presence would be such a problem tomorrow, I figured my money might be problematic too. This is completely different. Rachel is counting on that money for their trip to Europe. Then perhaps Jake's photogenic family members can step up and contribute. I am sure Rachel's college friends would be happy to help, since they are the people whose opinions apparently matter. Linda hung up on me. The next call came from Rachel, and I could hear tears in her voice before she even spoke. Naomi, please do not do this. I know Mom was harsh, but please do not punish me for what she said. I am not punishing you, Rachel. I am simply not attending the wedding as requested by you and Mom. But the honeymoon money, we cannot afford the trip without that. We planned everything around having that fund. I understand that must be disappointing, but according to Mom, money is not everything. You put in all the emotional labor of planning this wedding, remember? Surely that counts for more than a check anyone could write. You know, I never said those things. That was Mom talking. But you agreed with the seating arrangement. You agreed that I should not be in the family photos. You agreed that it would be better if I did not attend your wedding. The silence on Rachel's end stretched long enough that I could hear Jake's voice in the background asking what was happening. I thought maybe it would be easier if there was not any conflict on the wedding day. There would not have been any conflict, Rachel. I have spent months making sure your day would be perfect. I arranged vendor discounts. I coordinated schedules. I contributed money you did not even know came from me. The only conflict was Mom deciding I was not good enough to be included in your celebration. Can we please just talk about this after the wedding? Maybe we can work something out. Actually, there is something else you should know, I said, feeling strangely calm as I prepared to deploy the nuclear option. I own Willowbrook Estate. What? The venue you and Mom have been crediting yourself for finding I bought it 2 years ago as an investment property. I have been providing it to our family at a fraction of the standard rental cost. The silence this time lasted so long I thought the call had dropped. Rachel, you mean you own the place where I am getting married tomorrow? Every vendor you worked with went through my property management company. The deposit you thought came from the family wedding fund, that was me waiving the standard rental fees and security deposits. Oh my God. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. You and Mom decided that I should not attend the wedding at the venue. I own the wedding I have been financially supporting because my presence might ruin the photos at the celebration I made possible. Naomi, I had no idea. Mom handled all the venue arrangements. She told me she found a great deal through someone she knew. The great deal was me. The person she knew was me. Rachel started crying harder. What are you going to do? The wedding will proceed exactly as planned. All vendor contracts remain valid, and everyone will have the beautiful celebration you wanted. I just will not be attending as initially suggested. But you own the property. You could cancel everything. I could. But I would not do that to you, Rachel, even though you were willing to exclude me from your wedding to avoid damaging family photos. After Rachel hung up, I received a series of increasingly frantic text messages from Linda, followed by a call from Dad that went straight to voicemail. His message was simple. Please call me back. We need to fix this. But there was nothing left to fix. The situation had been broken long before today, and I was finally done pretending otherwise. By 6 o'clock that evening, my entire family had assembled in Dad's home office for what Linda kept calling an emergency family meeting. I arrived to find Linda pacing behind Dad's desk, while Rachel sat in one of the leather chairs with red eyes, and Jake stood awkwardly by the bookshelf, looking like he wished he could disappear. Dad gestured for me to take the remaining chair, but I preferred to stand near the door, maintaining my escape route in case this conversation went as badly as I expected. Naomi, we need to resolve this situation before tomorrow. Linda began without any preamble. You are being petty and vindictive, and you are trying to ruin Rachel's wedding day out of spite. Actually, I am doing exactly what you asked me to do. You told me not to show up because I would ruin the photos. I am following your instructions. That is not what I meant, and you know it. What did you mean then? Because from where I am standing, you told me that my presence at my sister's wedding would be embarrassing to the family, and that Rachel deserves better than having me in the background of her photos. Dad finally spoke up, his voice quieter than usual. Maybe we were too harsh in how we handled this. Linda gets excited about big events and sometimes says things without thinking them through completely. Says things without thinking them through, I repeated. Dad, she called the photographer and asked him to take minimal photos of me because I might overshadow Rachel's natural beauty. She seated me at the back of the reception with distant relatives, while Jake's unemployed cousin got a spot at the family table. This was not a momentary lapse in judgment. This was a calculated campaign to exclude me from my own sister's wedding. Linda's face flushed red. I was trying to make sure Rachel had the perfect day she deserves. You have always been so practical and understanding about these things. I thought you would want what was best for your sister. What was best for Rachel was having her family support her celebration, not having her mother decide which daughter was presentable enough to be included in wedding photos. Jake cleared his throat nervously. Maybe we should focus on moving forward rather than relitigating what already happened. I looked at Jake with something approaching pity. What already happened is that your future mother-in-law told me I was too ugly to attend your wedding, and your fiancé agreed with her assessment. That is not what happened, Rachel burst out. I never said anything about how you look. But you agreed that I should not attend? You agreed with the seating arrangement. You agreed with excluding me from family photos. When your mother suggested I fake an illness to avoid ruining your perfect day, you thought that was a reasonable request. I was trying to avoid conflict. There would not have been any conflict if you had simply treated me like a member of this family instead of an embarrassment to be managed. Linda straightened her shoulders and tried to regain control of the conversation. Look, we can work this out. Family misunderstandings happen all the time. We just need to communicate better and make sure everyone feels included tomorrow. The wedding will proceed as planned, I said calmly. All the vendor contracts remain valid, the flowers will be delivered on time, the catering is confirmed, and the photographer will capture every moment of Rachel's perfect day. Thank you, Rachel said through her tears. I know we messed up, but thank you for not canceling everything. However, I continued, I will not be attending the ceremony or reception as originally suggested, but I will be sending a representative in my place. Linda looked confused. A representative? Since I own the venue, I need someone on site to handle any property management issues that might arise during your event. My +1 invitation from the original wedding invitation will be used for my videographer who will be documenting the celebration for insurance and property management purposes. The room fell silent as everyone processed this information. You're a videographer, Dad asked. I assume you would want professional documentation of the beautiful celebration taking place at my property. The footage will be useful for future marketing materials, and I want to make sure we have a complete record of how the space is utilized during events. Jake looked pale. You mean someone will be filming the entire wedding? Only the parts that take place at my venue, which happens to be the ceremony, the cocktail hour, the reception, and all the vendor setup and breakdown. Standard property management documentation. Linda's voice was barely a whisper. You are going to have someone filming us while we are celebrating Rachel's wedding? I am going to have professional documentation of the event taking place at my business property, yes. I would think you would appreciate having high-quality video of such an important family milestone. Rachel looked at Jake, then back at me. What do you want us to do? It was the first time anyone had asked what I wanted, rather than telling me what would be best for everyone else. I want you to have the beautiful wedding you planned. I want your marriage to start with joy and celebration and love. But I also want you to understand that actions have consequences, and excluding family members from important celebrations damages relationships in ways that cannot always be repaired. Dad leaned forward in his chair. Are you saying our relationship cannot be repaired? I am saying that the relationship we had before this week is over. Whatever we build going forward will be different, because now I know how easily you are all willing to discard me when it suits your purposes. Linda tried one more approach. What if we changed the seating arrangement? What if we made sure you were included in all the family photos? Would you consider attending then? I looked at each of them, these people who had raised me and claimed to love me, while simultaneously deciding I was not good enough to be seen at important family functions. Linda, you called me this morning and told me not to even think about showing up to Rachel's wedding because I would ruin the photos, and my sister deserves better in her background. Those words cannot be taken back. That sentiment cannot be unsaid. You revealed what you really think of me, and now we all have to live with that truth. But people say things they do not mean when they are stressed, Rachel pleaded. Mom did not really mean it. She meant it enough to call the photographer in advance. She meant it enough to seat me with strangers at the back of the room. She meant it enough to spend weeks suggesting I change my appearance so I would not overshadow you. This was not stress talking, Rachel. This was honesty finally coming out. The meeting ended with Linda promising to publicly apologize to me in front of the wedding vendors the next day, Rachel agreeing to personally thank me for my financial contributions during her maid of honor speech, and Dad committing to having individual conversations with both of his daughters about family dynamics and respect. But I still did not plan to attend the wedding. The morning of Rachel's wedding day, I woke up in my apartment and put on the most beautiful dress I owned. It was a deep emerald green that complemented my coloring perfectly, and I paired it with professional makeup and an elegant updo that had taken an hour to perfect. Then I drove to Willowbrook Estate with my videographer and watched from the property management office as my family celebrated my sister's wedding at the venue I provided. Surrounded by flowers I helped choose, eating food I helped arrange, dancing to music I helped coordinate. Linda did make her public apology to the vendors, though she delivered it with the enthusiasm of someone reading a grocery list. Rachel did mention my contributions during her speech, though she managed to do it without making eye contact with the cameras that were documenting every moment. Dad found me in the office during the cocktail hour and sat down in the chair across from my desk. I should have spoken up sooner, he said. I should have defended you when I saw what was happening, but I have gotten into the habit of letting your mother handle family dynamics even when I disagree with her methods. Why did you let it go on for so long? Because it was easier to keep the peace than to address the problem. But easy is not the same as right, and I failed you as a father. Dad stayed with me for 20 minutes, watching through the office window as Rachel and Jake shared their first dance in the garden that I had restored. When he left to rejoin the reception, he squeezed my shoulder and said, I hope you can forgive a foolish old man who forgot that keeping peace is not the same as protecting his daughters. The videographer captured everything, including Linda's stiff apology, Rachel's tearful thank you speech, and the moment when several guests asked where I was and had to be told I was handling property management duties and could not join the celebration. By 9 o'clock that evening, the reception was winding down, and I was closing up the property management office when Rachel appeared in the doorway still wearing her wedding dress. It was beautiful, she said softly. Everything was absolutely perfect. I am glad. You deserved a perfect wedding day. Did I deserve it more than I deserved having my sister there to celebrate with me? I considered the question seriously before answering. You deserved both, Rachel. You deserved a perfect wedding day and a sister who was welcome to share it with you. But when you had to choose between those two things, you chose the perfect day. I was wrong. Yes, you were. Rachel stepped into the office and closed the door behind her. Can you forgive me? I can forgive you, but I cannot forget what I learned about how expendable I am when family photos are at stake. You are not expendable. You are the most important person in my life besides Jake. If that were true, you would not have been willing to exclude me from your wedding to avoid family conflict. We stood there looking at each other across the desk that separated us, my little sister in her perfect white dress, and me in my emerald green outfit that she would never see in her wedding photos. What happens now? Rachel asked. Now you go on your honeymoon to Europe with the money Jake's family contributed after mine was withdrawn. You start your marriage and build your life with your husband, and I continue being your sister, but with a much clearer understanding of where I fit in your list of priorities. And our relationship. Our relationship will be whatever we make it going forward, but it will never again be based on my willingness to accept being treated as less important than your comfort or convenience. Rachel nodded slowly, tears making tracks down her perfectly applied makeup. I love you, Naomi. I love you too, Rachel. That was never the question. After she left, I finished locking up the venue and drove home to my apartment, where I sat on my balcony with a glass of wine and thought about family and forgiveness and the difference between loving someone and allowing them to treat you badly. 2 weeks later, I received a handwritten letter from Rachel, postmarked from Paris. She wrote about the museums she and Jake had visited, the food they had discovered, and the conversations they had been having about family and respect and the importance of standing up for people you love. She also wrote, I understand now that asking you to sacrifice your place at my wedding to avoid conflict was not love. It was cowardice. I was so afraid of disappointing Mom that I was willing to hurt my sister instead. I cannot change what I did, but I want you to know that I will never make that choice again. The letter was 3 pages long and ended with an invitation to dinner when they returned from their honeymoon, not a family dinner, but just the two of them, so they could begin rebuilding their relationship on a foundation of mutual respect, rather than my willingness to be invisible when convenience required it. I kept that letter, and I accepted that dinner invitation. Linda and I had our own reckoning 2 months later during a conversation that was long overdue and painful for both of us. She apologized for what she called her misguided attempts to ensure Rachel's happiness. And I apologized for the dramatic way I had handled the situation, though I made it clear that I did not regret standing up for myself. I never wanted you to feel like you were not beautiful, Linda said during that conversation. I suppose I got so focused on making everything perfect for Rachel that I forgot how my words would affect you. The problem was not that I felt ugly, Mom. The problem was that you decided I was not good enough to be included in my own sister's wedding celebration, and everyone else in the family went along with that decision. We were wrong. Yes, you were. Our relationship today is different from what it was before Rachel's wedding. We are more careful with each other, more aware of how words can damage, and how easily family dynamics can become toxic when left unexamined. Linda no longer makes comments about my appearance or lifestyle choices, and I no longer accept criticism disguised as family concern. Dad and I have grown closer since that day, bonded by his recognition that staying silent when you witness injustice is its own form of participation. He has become more vocal in family discussions and more intentional about ensuring that everyone feels heard and valued. Rachel and I rebuilt our sister relationship slowly and deliberately, with conversations about boundaries and priorities and the difference between keeping peace and keeping family members happy at the expense of other family members. She has become my strongest advocate in family situations, the person who speaks up when dynamics start sliding toward the old patterns of exclusion and favoritism. And Willowbrook Estate has become something more than just a business property. It has become the venue where family members who have felt overlooked or undervalued can have their important celebrations, where the focus is on including everyone, rather than creating perfect photos with only the most photogenic participants. Sometimes the people who love you most can hurt you deepest because they know exactly which words will cut the sharpest. But family is not about blood or shared history or even love. Family is about respect and appreciation and the commitment to treat each other as inherently valuable rather than conditionally useful. I learned that day that my worth is not determined by someone else's perception of my value. Standing up for yourself does not make you vindictive or petty, it makes you human. And sometimes the best response to being excluded is not to beg for inclusion, but to remind people that you have always had the power to walk away. Today, 3 years later, our family dynamic has fundamentally changed. We operate on principles of mutual respect rather than assumed hierarchy. Everyone gets a voice in family decisions, and no one gets to be excluded for the convenience or comfort of others. Rachel recently asked me to be the maid of honor at her vow renewal ceremony next year, an invitation that came with the promise that this time she wants me standing right beside her where I belong, not hidden in the background, where I will not interfere with perfect photos. I said yes because forgiveness is not about forgetting what happened or pretending it did not hurt. Forgiveness is about choosing to build something new and better on the foundation of hard-earned wisdom and the commitment to do better next time. And Willowbrook Estate continues to host celebrations where every family member is welcome, where the focus is on joy and inclusion rather than exclusion and control. Because everyone deserves to be celebrated, not hidden in the background of their own life's most important moments. What would you do if your family excluded you from a wedding because they thought you would ruin the photos? Have you ever had to stand up for yourself when the people you love tried to make you invisible? Share your thoughts in the comments below, because I would love to hear your stories of finding your voice in difficult family situations. If this story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe for more tales of family drama and personal growth. And do not forget to share this video with anyone who might need to hear that they deserve better than being someone's backup plan or invisible option. Thank you for listening to my story, and remember that you always have the power to choose respect over acceptance and authenticity over keeping the peace.